Imagine a vast empire ruled by fierce warriors and brilliant engineers where gold was plentiful, the gods demanded blood, and the capital city rose from the waters like a dream. This was the Aztec Empire, a civilization that flourished in the heart of what is now Mexico, but whose dominance was shattered in a dramatic and bloody conquest. It's a tale of intrigue, betrayal, and the collision of two worlds: the indigenous people of the Americas and the ambitious, gold-hungry conquistadors of Spain. Today we take you on a journey from the origins of the Aztec Empire to its downfall at the hands of the Spanish invaders, led by the cunning Hernán Cortés. How could one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world fall so quickly? What role did disease, deception, and diplomacy play in this extraordinary conquest? Stay with me as we journey through one of history's most gripping stories, the conquest of Mexico. Our story begins long before the Spanish set foot in the Americas. Around the year 1325, a group of nomadic people, known as the Mexica, arrived in the Valley of Mexico. These people had wandered through the region, seeking a place to call their own, guided by a prophecy from their gods. They were told to search for an eagle perched on a cactus, holding a snake in its beak, and where they found this sign, they would build their new home. They found this sign on a small swampy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. It was here that they founded the city of Tenochtitlan, which would become the heart of the mighty Aztec Empire. Over the next 2 centuries, the Mexica, who became known as the Aztecs, used their strategic alliances, military might, and religious fervor to dominate the region. As the city of Tenochtitlan grew, so did its power. By the early 1500s, it had become one of the largest and most advanced cities in the world, with over 200,000 residents. Its towering pyramids, bustling markets, and intricate system of canals were a marvel of engineering. But the Aztec Empire was built on tribute and warfare. Surrounding city-states were forced to pay heavy taxes in gold, food, and captives for sacrifice, keeping the empire strong but breeding resentment among its neighbors. While the Aztec Empire thrived in the Americas across the Atlantic Ocean, Europe was undergoing significant changes. The late 1400s and early 1500s marked the beginning of the Age of Exploration. European kingdoms, eager for wealth and new trade routes, were sending expeditions across the globe. Spain, having recently driven the Moors out of the Iberian Peninsula, was hungry for expansion and conquest. The Spanish monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, had sponsored Christopher Columbus' voyage to the New World in 1492, and soon after, Spain had established colonies in the Caribbean. By the early 1500s, Spanish explorers were pushing further west into uncharted territories. They were searching for gold, glory, and new lands to claim for the crown. One such explorer was Hernán Cortés, a man who would become infamous for his role in the downfall of the Aztec Empire. Hernán Cortés was born in 1485 in Medellin, Spain, into a family of lesser nobility. From an early age, Cortés was ambitious, restless, and eager to make a name for himself. He sailed to the New World in 1504, settling in the Spanish colony of Hispaniola before moving to Cuba, where he became a wealthy landowner. But Cortés craved more than wealth. He wanted power, glory, and adventure. In 1519, the governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez, authorized an expedition to explore the mainland of Mexico. Cortés was chosen to lead it. With 11 ships, 600 men, 16 horses, and a few cannons, he set sail, disobeying Velázquez's orders to cancel the voyage and landing on the coast of modern-day Veracruz. From the moment Cortés set foot on Mexican soil, he knew that this was no ordinary land. Stories of a rich empire to the west, a land filled with gold and ruled by a mighty king, reached his ears. It was the Aztec Empire, and Cortés would stop at nothing to conquer it. As Cortés continued his journey inland, he realized that he needed someone who could not only bridge the language gap between the Spanish and the native peoples, but also help him understand the political complexities of the region. that someone came in the form of a young woman named La Malinche. La Malinche, also known as Malintzin or Doña Marina, was a Nahua woman born around 1500 in a region controlled by the Aztec Empire. As a young girl, she was sold or given away as a slave to Mayan traders, which is how she became fluent in both the Nahuatl language of the Aztecs and the Mayan language. This linguistic ability would make her invaluable to Cortés. In 1519, when Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico, La Malinche was among a group of indigenous women given to the Spanish by a Mayan chieftain as a peace offering. Initially, Cortés relied on a Spanish priest named Jerónimo de Aguilar, who had been living among the Mayans, to communicate through the Mayan language. But once Cortés realized that La Malinche could speak both Nahuatl and Mayan, she quickly became his primary interpreter. Her fluency in these languages, and later in Spanish, allowed her to become a crucial link between Cortés and the indigenous peoples he encountered. But La Malinche was much more than just a translator. She was an advisor and a strategist, someone who provided Cortés with deep insights into the political and social structures of the Aztec world. She helped him forge alliances with indigenous groups that were eager to overthrow their Aztec overlords, such as the Tlaxcalans. And as Cortés moved closer to Tenochtitlan, she played an essential role in communicating with Emperor Montezuma's emissaries. Through La Malinche's knowledge and her ability to navigate both the language and culture of the Aztec Empire, Cortés was able to gain a deeper understanding of the divisions within the Aztec-controlled regions. Her involvement was key in convincing the Tlaxcalans, fierce rivals of the Aztecs, to join forces with the Spanish. This alliance would prove crucial as Cortés prepared to march toward the heart of the Aztec Empire. Word of Cortés's arrival quickly spread to Tenochtitlan. Emperor Montezuma II, the ruler of the Aztec Empire, was deeply concerned. According to Aztec legend, the god Quetzalcoatl, who had been exiled centuries earlier, was prophesied to return one day. When Montezuma heard reports of pale-skinned men arriving on the coast, he wondered if Cortés was this god returning to reclaim his throne. Montezuma sent emissaries to meet Cortés, offering lavish gifts of gold and precious stones in the hopes that the foreigners would be appeased and leave. But the gifts had the opposite effect. The sight of such wealth only fueled Cortés's ambition. He pressed onward, determined to meet Montezuma face to face and claim the riches of the empire. La Malinche, now fully fluent in Spanish, played a pivotal role in these initial encounters. Acting as both interpreter and diplomat, she translated Montezuma's messages and helped Cortés navigate the complex web of Aztec political and religious customs. She was well aware of the cultural significance of Cortés being perceived as Quetzalcoatl and used this belief to sow uncertainty and fear among the Aztecs. In November 1519, Cortés and his forces, including La Malinche, arrived at the gates of Tenochtitlan. Montezuma, torn between fear and curiosity, welcomed the Spanish into the city. Cortés was awestruck by Tenochtitlan's grandeur, but his ambitions remained fixed on conquest. La Malinche continued to advise Cortés, explaining the importance of the Aztec religious ceremonies and warning him of the delicate balance between Montezuma and his people. She had become not only the bridge between two worlds, but also the key to Cortés's understanding of how to exploit the empire's weaknesses. For several weeks, Cortés and his men were treated as honored guests within the walls of Tenochtitlan. Montezuma believed that by keeping the Spaniards close, he could control them. But Cortés had other plans. Through La Malinche's counsel, Cortés grew increasingly bold. She advised him on the intricacies of Aztec court politics and the subtle tensions brewing within the empire. With her insight, Cortés devised a plan to take Montezuma hostage. He believed that by controlling the emperor, he could control the entire empire. Montezuma, sensing the growing discontent among his people, hesitated but ultimately complied, fearing that a rebellion could destroy the fragile peace. La Malinche played a crucial role during these tense moments. acting as the primary communicator between Montezuma and Cortés. She understood the emperor's fears and helped convey Cortés's demands while maintaining the facade of diplomacy. But beneath the surface, the empire was on the brink of collapse. As the weeks passed, tensions between the Spanish and the Aztecs grew. The Aztecs began to question Montezuma's loyalty, and rumors of rebellion spread through the city. Cortés, sensing that his grip on the empire was slipping, knew that something had to be done. As the weeks passed, tension between the Spanish and the Aztecs reached a boiling point. The Aztecs, outraged by the continued presence of the Spanish in their sacred city and the imprisonment of their emperor, rose up in revolt. Montezuma, still a prisoner, was forced by Cortés to speak to his people in an attempt to quell the rebellion. But the Aztec people, seeing their once proud emperor reduced to a puppet, turned against him. Malinche once again found herself in the center of the storm. Acting as the conduit between Cortés and the Aztecs, she tried to mediate the escalating conflict, but it was too late. The Spanish were outnumbered and trapped. Montezuma was killed, whether by his own people or by the Spanish remains a mystery to this day. With Montezuma dead and the Aztecs in full rebellion, Cortés and his men were forced to flee the city. On June 30th, 1520, during what became known as La Noche Triste, or the Night of Sorrows, the Spanish attempted a daring escape across the causeways of Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs attacked relentlessly, and many Spanish soldiers and their indigenous allies were killed. Cortés barely escaped with his life. Despite their defeat, Cortés was not finished. He retreated to the safety of his Tlaxcalan allies and began preparing for a final assault on Tenochtitlan. But as he gathered his forces, a new and deadly ally arrived, the smallpox epidemic. Introduced by the Spanish, the disease devastated the Aztec population, killing thousands and weakening the empire beyond repair. La Malinche, still at Cortés's side, continued to act as his translator and advisor. She facilitated negotiations with various indigenous groups, some of whom remained loyal to the Aztecs, while others sought revenge for years of oppression. La Malinche's influence during this time cannot be overstated. She was the bridge between the Spanish and the indigenous world, helping to solidify alliances that would ultimately lead to the fall of Tenochtitlan. In August 1521, after months of brutal siege warfare, the once great city of Tenochtitlan fell. The Aztec Empire was no more. Cortés claimed victory, and New Spain was born. After the fall of the Aztec Empire, La Malinche's story became intertwined with the legacy of the conquest. She gave birth to Cortés' son Martín, one of the first mestizos, a symbol of the cultural blending that would come to define much of Latin America. But her legacy remains controversial. Some view her as a traitor who helped bring down her own people. Others see her as a survivor, a woman who used her intelligence and abilities to navigate a world dominated by powerful men. Today, La Malinche's role in the conquest of Mexico is still debated. Was she a hero or a villain, a victim or a collaborator? Perhaps in the end she was all of these things. Her story, like that of the Aztec Empire itself, is complex, filled with tragedy, betrayal, and resilience, and her impact on history cannot be denied. Tenochtitlan became Mexico City, the capital of New Spain, and the Aztecs were forced to submit to Spanish rule. But the conquest was not just a military victory, it was a cultural and religious conquest as well. The Spanish imposed their language, their religion, and their way of life on the indigenous peoples of Mexico. Yet despite the brutal nature of the conquest, the legacy of the Aztecs survived. Their influence can still be seen today in the culture, art, and traditions of modern Mexico. The story of the Aztec Empire is a story of resilience, survival, and the enduring power of a people whose spirit could not be crushed, even in the face of overwhelming odds.